Today is normally the day where I bring you the podcast, but I'm currently on the road. I got on a flight at the very last minute because I heard there was going to be... Well, why don't you just tell me what's going on?
Yeah, there's going to be a protest in Leicester Square at midday tomorrow, Monday the 23rd. And basically we were talking and I said, hey, you should come over for it. And so he jumped on a plane and now he's here and that's why I'm here.
Officially, I'm just here to have a discussion with you,
yeah.
to hang out. I didn't even know that Dankula sentencing was tomorrow. I knew it was coming soon. So anyway, this is a slightly different Culture War podcast episode where we're going to talk about what's going on with Dankula and probably some other stuff. So we're being joined by Sargon of Akkad. No, there's gonna be a and all right, man. Do you want to just start it off and what happened?
Yeah.
Give the 30-second version of the Dankula thing.
Okay, like 2 years ago, Mark Meechan, otherwise known as Count Dankula, he used to run a very small comedy YouTube channel. He made a video teaching his girlfriend's pug to do a Hitler salute to the phrase "gas the Jews" in order to piss off his girlfriend. 2 years later, he's been dragged through the courts. The video went viral. He's been dragged through the courts. He's being charged with gross offence under Section 127 of the Communications Act, which doesn't allow you to offend or insult people online. It's been a long court case. It's been very heavily publicised, and now we're at the point where it was about a month ago that Dankula was actually convicted, and now we're going to be receiving the sentence tomorrow, and we don't know what the sentence is going to be. But
so
it could be something like 6 months in jail, maximum sentence.
That's the maximum.
Yeah.
But it's his first offense. Do you think he'll get a maximum?
Well, it depends whether the judge is trying to make a point or not. And this judge has a history of being an absolute lunatic. For example, about a year ago, in fact 2 years ago now, there was a homeless man who had a bright orange toy gun, and he made a joke to a woman that he was going to use it on people if they didn't give him some spare change. Obviously a joke. It's a fluorescent orange toy gun. And for some reason, this girl reported it to the police. It ended up going to a trial, and this judge actually convicted this homeless person under the Firearms Act.
Whoa.
I'm not joking. That's how lunatic this judge is. He's really beyond the pale. He's clearly one of these sort of activist judges. That we have these at the sort of lower levels, and then if you appeal and go to the High Court, then you find it's more sensible judges.
So, essentially with Count Dankula, you've got somebody who made a YouTube video, and it went viral, and now he is potentially going to get locked up because of this video. And I guess it's the basic free speech argument of whether or not someone has a right to make a joke versus whether or not being offensive should be permitted. And when we talk about... It's interesting because we have this free speech debate in the U.S., but clearly it's dramatic. I feel like it affects you guys.
Different. It's completely different. You guys, no matter what happens, you guys are protected by your First Amendment.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I can't describe how lucky you are. We don't have that over here.
Well, you know why we have it? Because of you guys.
Yeah, I know, and we don't have that, and that's why you can end up criminalizing comedians. There was a young teenage girl who was also on the 19th. This came out in the news that she had been convicted for being grossly offensive on social media. Because on Instagram, she had published a set of rap lyrics by someone called Snap Dog, I've never heard of. But these lyrics apparently contained, presumably, the N-word. But she had posted these lyrics because someone she knew, a 13-year-old kid she'd known, had died, and this was his favourite rapper or something. And so she posted these lyrics, I guess, presumably his favourite song or something like that, in tribute to him. And someone reported this anonymously to the police. The police came around and said, right, no, this is hate speech. She was fined £500. She's got 8 weeks community service and an 8-week curfew.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts.
Did you see? There's a I guess he's a Vine star, but he's a guy who makes these short videos. He made one about Starbucks racism, where
is it Long Beach Griffey?
It's I don't know. Maybe it was a short one where he was like clicking through the YouTube video.
Oh, right, no, that's
all right. So let me explain this. So. This is a hilarious video.
Yeah.
The Starbucks incident happens. Starbucks is accused of racism. This comedian made a video where it was titled, "This is how Starbucks trains their employees on racism." And there's an employee sitting down with a notepad, and the instructor decides that he's like, we should just skip through this. And every time he skips, it cuts the video, so it makes it sound really racist. So he says things like, make sure to keep the black I don't want to say too much stuff because I'll get in trouble.
Oh yeah.
But he's like, and people will love separate but equal, and it's like, it just basically, because he keeps clicking just to skip ahead, it makes the guy, and so the guy's writing down verbatim what's happening in the video. Guidelines strike on YouTube, and the video was removed.
Really?
For hate speech. And this was him mocking the, like, so I guess the reason I bring this up is we certainly have this problem in the US too, but in that instance, he was making fun of Starbucks, who was being accused of racism. He was actually ridiculing the perpetrators, the company that was accused of doing it. In the instance of Count Dankula, he was making fun of Nazis. Like there was a story that went viral shortly recently about the Finland dog.
Yeah. That was So for anyone who doesn't know, in the 1930s, under Nazi rule, someone in Finland also taught their dog how to do a Hitler salute, and the Nazis were obviously very annoyed about this, but they actually decided not to follow it up, and they just left this man alone. I think
it was that nobody would rat on him. That they did. I read briefly. It's like they did a bunch of interviews, then people kept saying, "Oh, I don't know."
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to check, but I just find it impressive that the British government is more dedicated to eradicating people mocking Hitler than the Nazis were.
Yeah, well, the reason I bring it up too is that whatever. I'm not going to assume what Dankula's intent was, but if we have a past example of where teaching a dog to do the salute is offensive to Nazis, and the Nazis were angry about it, then certainly continue to do so would continue to mock Nazis.
You would think so.
But it's crazy to me that, I mean, how many people were really offended by this? I think...
None. There were no complaints about the video. It was the Scottish police themselves who saw the video had gone viral, had got national attention, and they were the ones who went down and decided to be... Effectively, they are they're the complainant in the case. And they got the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities. They actually contacted them and asked them to join them in this complaint. The Scottish Council of Jewish Communities weren't the ones making the complaint. No one made a complaint. So it's just like this seems to be part of a kind of problem with our police forces, where they are very proactive about policing what they consider to be hate speech, and they're honestly kind of like an inquisition. I mean, there are plenty of screenshots going around Twitter of local police forces saying, we will find you and we will catch you if you post hate speech on the internet. And it's like, that's downright inquisitorial.
Didn't you guys have a few different, like, major trafficking scandals?
Oh yeah. They're not bothered about it.
Yeah,
they don't care about that.
But you know what I think? I guess to try and, like, find some reason within this, I think it's just easy. It's really easy to be on the internet and to say, "Oop, there's hate speech." Then you make sure your number's up when the local community says, what are you doing with the tax money? It's, oh, well, we got rid of this hate speech. We enforced these laws. And then tracking down trafficking is extremely dangerous, terrifying probably, difficult. So what do? Low-hanging fruit.
That's definitely one incentive, but I don't think it's the only one. There's also another incentive, and I see this all the time whenever I see police interactions with Tommy Robinson. There is definitely a sort of a way that you can tell by just the reactions, the expressions on their faces, the way they're talking to him. There is a feeling of moral superiority that comes with this, and it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. The police should be the neutral arbiters of the law, but the way they speak to Tommy Robinson, and not just Tommy, there are lots of like TV programs that will show you like life in working class Britain, and a lot of these people have had problems with Muslim communities, and then they'll be filming the police reaction when they go to the station, and the police is like, oh, look at this. Racist. You know, they're not outright calling them racist, but they're treating them like they're racists. Like these people don't have a legitimate complaint or anything like that. And it's genuinely harrowing to watch, because these people don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have lots of money. They can't just move. And the police are just treating them like the criminals for coming in and levelling a complaint because a gang of Muslim kids have smashed up their car or something, or whatever. And it's definitely a sort of edge of moral superiority to it. And you can tell that the police feel like good people when they're arresting people for posting something nasty online, and that's a scary incentive in my opinion.
You know what is absolutely fascinating to me?
Yeah.
That the founding fathers of the United States, they didn't predict this.
But they knew something like this was
right. They had experienced something coming from what was once our shared government and said we don't want that, and so the Bill of Rights was drafted with several protections. And it's actually funny that I think we are headed towards where you guys are. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it's not just the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. It's also the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment.
You're gonna have to remind me what the Fourth Amendment.
So the funny thing is, so the First Amendment, religion, press, speech.
Yep.
A lot of I'm just going to say this right now, just as a gentle reminder to everybody. The First Amendment is not free speech. There's this comic that goes around from XKCD where he says, it's basically only the government can infringe free speech. No. Free speech is a principle. It's a human right, the right to express yourself without fear of bodily harm. So long, but we do agree, most people, on certain limitations like threats of violence and creating things like that. But free speech exists outside of the First Amendment. The U.S. created the First Amendment to make sure the government couldn't take action against people for their speech. That's an important note. Yeah. Second Amendment, we get to have guns.
Of course.
You guys also don't.
Yeah.
But
no, we do have guns. It's just that they're incredibly heavily regulated.
Yeah, I think we are heading in that direction too.
You are, yeah.
I think we're heading that way with free speech.
Yep.
Now the Third Amendment, no one really cares about. That's quartering. That soldiers can't.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what the Third Amendment is. I'm a terrible American. The fourth is search and seizure without warrant. And yes, we've already been.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody knows that we get spied on all the time. Our data is tracked. The Fifth Amendment, and this is a big one that I think a lot of people have neglected, is the right due process.
Yep.
And when you look what's going on at universities.
Well, before we even get there, that's another good point, because what was really interesting about Dankula's case, and I don't know the reason for this either, but he didn't get a jury.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. When I learned that, I was like, holy shit. So we have a trial where it's an activist judge, no jury to hold them accountable.
No complainants.
No complainant, yeah, and it's just like...
I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty smug as an American.
You absolutely should. I mean, ultimately, what we're going to be pushing for is something like a First Amendment and various other, sort of like actual legal protections. Because in Britain we have an unwritten constitution, so it's based on a series of like legal and philosophical precedents, basically.
Yeah.
And it's lasted so long because British people are usually quite reasonable, but this is highly unreasonable. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so we're in a position where we genuinely do need something like your constitution now.
I kind of feel like, though, is this just an outlier? Do you think?
No, this happens.
This happens all.
Thousands of people a year.
You already gave another example of that woman in Snapdog.
Yeah.
So I just try to be reasonable.
Yeah.
You're like, are we looking at Count Dankula and with a magnifying glass and thinking it's the entirety, or
no? It's all over the country. 4,000 people last year were arrested for like hate speech violations on social media. It's thousands of people. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop.
To beat the dead horse, because I'm sure the people who are watching understand the arguments for free speech. Everything is offensive.
Yeah.
Everything. The guy who made the video making fun of Starbucks. Okay, Starbucks is accused of racism. So he said, I'm going to mock Starbucks. He got his video taken down and he got a strike on his channel.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully that's
non-governmental.
Yeah, exactly. That's a far cry from being dragged through the courts for 2 years. Because, at the end of the day, he's got to pay for lawyers. He's got to, and this hangs over your head as well, because, if people, realize you're on trial for hate speech or being grossly offensive or whatever, no one's going to hire you, And if Dankula wasn't like a talented comedian, because when he did this, he had like 7 subscribers.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, it's not like he was predicting that this would be widely viewed. It's just someone found the video, posted it to Reddit, was like, haha, isn't this hilarious? And then millions of people saw it. And so now he's found himself in this terrible position. But luckily he's a talented comedian and video maker, and he's managed to amass an audience of about 160,000. So this is now his job,
Well, if the goal of the Scottish legal system was to make Dankula famous and give him a career furthering what he was doing, then they've succeeded wonderfully.
Yes, they have, yeah.
And it's mind-blowing to me. It's a Streisand effect.
Yeah.
They could have said, oh, he's just some guy with 7 subscribers. The video went viral. It is what it is. But by bringing attention to it, they just...
Yeah. Censorship only works in a totalitarian system. It only works if you... No, it does. It only works if you've got control of absolutely everything. Because that way you can prevent the media from talking about it. You can prevent people from posting, flyers or blogs or whatever. You can prevent the Streisand effect from happening, because people won't even know that something has been censored. That's the great danger with totalitarianism, is you can't even be a martyr. You just disappear.
Yeah.
That's it. You're gone. But in a liberal democracy, it's not a totalitarian system, although it's clearly edging that way. You can't keep it quiet.
I've got a question for you. Did you the Communications and Decency Act? What was it called?
The Communications Act of 2003.
Have you read through that? And
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you this. Something I noticed is in one of my videos, there are I think I pulled up 3 examples of UK media companies that re-uploaded his video in its entirety without really providing any context. So I'm curious then, if Dankula had 7 subscribers, if the crime was to post this video, is it a crime for the media companies to then repost it in its full context, even using the same language in the article? I'm sure people find that offensive, right? If someone's going to find the video offensive,
it's no different. It's the same video, so why wouldn't it be offensive? But this is the thing. I mean, the problem with the Communications Act, Section 127 in particular, is the way that these things are worded is incredibly vague. It's incredibly slippery, and it's incredibly broad. And so it's effectively at the discretion of the authorities. That's the problem that we have with it. It's if they feel like doing this. And obviously when the Daily Mirror or the Telegraph or whoever upload it, they're going to be able to say, well, we're doing this for journalistic purposes, this is just for the education of the public, we put a warning on there, blah, blah, blah. And it's not so much what Dankula said either, it's more how many times he said it, because it was a running joke throughout the video,
right.
And so he constantly repeated the same phrase. And so that was really the thing I think they got him on. He said it like 20 times or something. Like, yes, that was the joke.
So Jonathan Pye, is that his name?
Yes.
He said, it was actually the first time I heard it in this context, because the first thing I heard about Dankula was that he was mocking the Jews. But Jonathan Pye said he was mocking Nazis.
Yes.
And then when I saw the story about the dog in Finland, I was like, I'm not going to assume the intent, but I would say historical context, it really does sound like he's mocking Nazis.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Making the dog.
It wasn't even. I mean, the joke is at the expense of the Nazis, but the idea was just to wind up his girlfriend. I mean, he says at the beginning of the video, look, I'm not a Nazi, I'm just doing this because I know it's going to piss off my girlfriend.
He said the least cute things possible. Like he was specifically disparaging them.
Yes, it would have been no point doing it had it not been Nazis.
So I guess the reason I bring this up is that you mentioned the moral superiority of the police.
Yes.
And then the interpretation of who he's trying to offend versus what he actually said.
Yeah.
Is your government becoming a moral authority?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Moral police instead of legal.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly the problem with what our government is doing. Every party at the moment, the Conservative, say the 2 major ones, the Conservative and Labour only ever make moral arguments. They only make these moral arguments. They're always grounded in socialism, so really they're terrible. And the Conservative Party seem to have absolutely no moral spine at all. To be able to no, they don't. They should be standing up for classical liberal values and saying, no, we do not do X, Y, and Z for these reasons. And this is why Jacob Rees-Mogg is so phenomenally popular, because he will actually make a moral argument for capitalism. He will make a moral argument for free speech, because you have to. Because ultimately, moral arguments persuade people.
There was a video that got sent to me of East London Sharia patrols.
Yep.
And when I see these things, like I went to Sweden, I've constantly heard about Muslim gangs and stuff like that, and I'm always kind of like, I do think there are a lot of people that really are hyper focused, and when all they do is read the same news over and over again, they might be exaggerating.
Yeah.
But then I saw this video, and I saw people being attacked.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you want to talk a little about that? Because I want to. Do you know anything about it? I want to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I probably know about as much as you do on these.
Oh, okay.
But basically, yes, there have been many times where there have been majority Muslim communities that, and out of these communities have come very religious men who have said, right, we need Sharia patrols, and they call them Sharia zones, and they go around harassing people in these areas that they consider to be not properly Muslim. Or not Sharia compliant.
In the video I saw, I believe it was CBS News. It might have been an American woman who was on one of the patrols, and the guy was explaining it's his right to choose Sharia.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is that there is an actual mainstream news report about this.
Yeah.
The woman calls the men ridiculous in the report, and again, like I want to highlight this because this is a moral. This is what you see when you have moral authority.
Yes.
It's not about individual freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the mutual respect and understanding of each other's life views.
Not, no.
It's about moral absolutism.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what the Muslim men in that video were arguing for is their right to oppress people, right to force people into Sharia law. And I don't know. I found that video frustrating to watch because I wanted the reporter to say you don't have the freedom to oppress someone. Like,
exactly.
Don't just call them ridiculous because that just makes you look like you don't have an argument.
She didn't.
No, absolutely not. And she should have absolutely been like, no, what you're asking for is distinctly immoral and it goes against the larger values of the society which you're in. You have to be stopped. I mean, thankfully, the Conservative government have actually started clamping down on these Sharia patrols because they are utterly indefensible. And it's only the really indefensible stuff that they will ever do anything about.
When in that video, when the reporter's with them, and they simply walk up to two young men drinking and say, "We just want to let you know," I was like, "Oh, I was like, is that what they're talking about? That's totally fine. That's free speech. That's your right to go and spread your values peacefully." And they say, people are drinking and gambling in these parks, and we don't appreciate it. We'd like to let you know it's happening. And I'm like, that's cool. And then you see the next clip of like the candid video where the press isn't there, and then you have, I don't want to say it's the same people, but then you have actual people being beaten, yelled at, attacked.
All of these people know each other. It's the same communities. They're all permissive of it. This is a common thing that people do, is assume that no one else in these communities knows what's going on. They do. They're quite tight-knit communities. They're quite close. They're aware that these things happen. And, I mean, there are people in these communities who speak out about them as well. This is not to say that everyone in these communities is permissive of it, but it's honestly more common to find people on the news who are making excuses for why this happens rather than standing up in their own moral way against these things. Because there are British Muslims who will absolutely condemn these things in unequivocal terms. They would just say, no, it is absolutely wrong to try and force Sharia on an area in Britain. They will absolutely just condemn them. But they're the lone voices in the wilderness. Most of them will make it say, well, it's not the entire Muslim community. We don't all agree with that. It's okay, that's good. But if you're going to stay silent, silence is consent. If you can't speak up about this, then we're going to assume you don't object to it. Because that's what literally you do with everyone else, and there's no reason we should treat you differently.
So, not to get too much in a different direction with like Sharia patrol stuff, I just wanted to kind of highlight the idea of like moral authority and some examples of that. But going back to Dankula, you mentioned earlier, we'll just touch lightly on this again, you think they might make an example of him because they have an activist judge.
We don't know. We don't know what the sentence is going to be. But, I mean, if I had to go with my guts, the way that the judge and the prosecution were acting about this, I think they're probably going to... I think the thing is, I mean, they can give him community service, and if he refuses to carry out the community service, then it's undoubtedly going to be jail. And if I were Dankula, I would refuse to do any goddamn community service for this charge. I would
go to jail.
Oh, damn right. I would do a pizza, and I'd be like, no, I'm literally not going to cooperate with you at this point. So you're going to have to drag me off to jail because this is unjust. For an activist judge on a law that is unbelievably unfair, to sit there without a jury and say, yeah, you've committed a crime by telling a joke, then get stuffed.
This is a terrible analogy, but I just watched Darkest Hour about the Nazis and the invasion in Europe, and seeing Winston Churchill refuse to even negotiate peace because you can't appease dictators.
Yeah.
And there's the point where it's like, we won't stop until we're lying face down choking on our own blood. And I'm like, it's totally different.
It's the same principle, though.
Right. It's
because it is tyranny. It
refusing to back down.
Yeah, it absolutely is tyrannical, what they're doing to Dankula. And, there are differences in scale, but not differences in principle when it comes to this.
What are the ramifications for not just your country, but the West? Like, so you can start with, what do you think is going to happen in the UK if this, is a harsh example?
I don't know. I mean, a precedent is going to be set with this case. This is going to be something that comes up again in legal history. So, this is why I've personally got the gut feeling that it's going to be harsher than otherwise is reasonable. Even from a perspective that thought this was an appropriate thing to do. I don't hold that perspective at all, but if I did, you would still think, okay, we've got to do something, but we're not going to go the whole hog, because he's not like a goose-stepping Nazi, and he's demonstrably not, and so, but I think that this judge, I mean, one of the things that he's told me is that when in the courtroom, he was regularly demolishing their arguments. Because, like, on YouTube, a lot of what we do is just basically argue back and forth all day, every day. And so when you take someone from this environment and put them in, a different environment where people are, they're making arguments, but they're not quite as voracious in a way, and then we're quite well honed in the YouTube community, and this goes for literally everyone in the YouTube community when we're talking politics, because all we do is talk politics, make arguments, and so anyone from any of these communities is a surprisingly strong debater against someone who's just, outside of, like, and doesn't do this as often. So I think he may well have annoyed the judge somewhat by the strength of his arguments, and because I don't think the judge has a case.
What if, and I'm not saying it's true, just saying, the hero we need meme, where it's somebody's, the judge, like in this instance it would be the judge knows what he's doing is wrong, but he wants to push so hard that it actually forces your government to recognize the need for free speech or something. I think that'd be really. It sounds the simple solution.
No, it's not impossible. Because I mean, like Joe Johnson, I can't remember what cabinet position he holds off the top of my head, but he recently he's part of the Conservative cabinet, and he recently put out a declaration that universities now have to protect free speech. Like, for example, I went to Brighton to speak at Sussex University, had a debate with a communist who's actually a very nice chap. It's not.
This was recently?
Yeah, it was recently. Yeah, a couple of days
I saw
ago.
a video about it from you.
Yeah, and we were deplatformed by the university, and this is actually in violation of the law now. And so the student society that asked me to come down there are now going to be following this up, because this is now a legal matter, so there are people in this country still who do believe in free speech. The problem is, like, none of them are found in the Labour Party, but they're not in power, so that's okay. But you could probably split the Conservative Party down the middle. You've got half of them are actual proper Conservatives, and the other half are what are called Wets. But basically people who are tacitly permissive of far left ideology. I mean, Theresa May, she keeps going on about wealth inequality and gender pay gaps, and she calls herself a feminist. And I don't see how a Conservative can ever really call herself a feminist. I mean, unless if you're not a Marxist, then you can't be a feminist. If you don't buy into the fundamental sort of presuppositions of it, that women are being oppressed by men, and that there is a problem if men earn more than women, and things like this, a Conservative should never agree to any of these axioms. And yet she does, and she will sit there parroting whatever the Labour talking points are. And it's I think why Jacob Rees-Mogg is surging in popularity, because he refutes them.
I just kind of had a crazy epiphany.
Go on.
You know who really hated free speech?
What, every totalitarian regime?
The Nazis.
Yeah, of course they did, yeah.
And do you know who else got mad about a dog making a Nazi salute?
Absolutely.
The Nazis.
I'm not going to say that Theresa May's like the Nazis.
No, but
but
I want to dial this back. I don't really want to play the game of calling someone Nazis. But what if there is a possibility that the people who are offended by this aren't the social justice activists you think they are? They're actually more ideological. I don't want to say Nazi, but you know what I mean?
Totalitarian.
What if they're actually offended because he was actually making fun of Nazis?
I don't think so. I think I don't think anyone's genuinely offended here. I think what this is, I think what this is a raw exercise of power, to say that, look, these are the rules that we've chosen and we like, and we want you to abide by them. And when the citizenry don't like these things, they need to be put in their place. That's what I think this is.
Doesn't sound like a fun place to live.
No, I don't consider Britain a free country.
Has it always been like this?
No.
I mean, if you ask an American, we're going to be like, yes.
No, absolutely not. The Communications Act came in 2003 under the Labour government, and the Labour government, after something like, it was probably like 16, 17 years of Conservative governments, and the Labour government just put in all of this stuff that at the time, because, I mean, people forget it wasn't always this way. So when they said, oh, can we have a little bit? Everyone thought, well, I mean, how bad's it going to be? We're not going to start arresting people for jokes, are we? And, sort of 15 years later, here we are.
There's a story that I read. It's rather funny. Mm-hmm. In New York City, there was a black cop who went to Central Park, and he went to all of these young white couples who were drinking wine at their picnics, and he said, drinking alcohol in public is illegal, and wrote them tickets. Mm-hmm. And the reason he did it was because and this is like I don't know how much I read this in like a New York paper. The police go to the black neighborhoods and they write tickets to the people who are drinking 40s on their stoop in front of their house. And he said, "Look, man, you're having a drink on your house with your buddies. Why is that?" He said, "You know what? You're going to give them a ticket. I'm going to go to Central Park and I'm going to give these people a ticket because they're doing the same thing." Yeah. He got in trouble for it.
Really?
The city actually...
But he was doing technically
exactly the same thing. Yeah. And so what was really interesting about this was that I tried to find sources on this because it was like one paper that I read a while ago, but they cited this quote from a lawmaker. When New York City banned public drinking, one of the lawmakers said, let it be known that this law will never be construed to mean that someone can't enjoy a beer with their lunch. This law is specifically about dealing with homeless inebriation and public disorder. Yeah. But what is it today?
Exactly.
Literal.
Yeah.
You can't drink in public, period. So it's like there's a contextual understanding when the law is written that doesn't exist anymore.
This is a very interesting point, actually, and this is something that we're going to have to start drilling into our heads. The letter of the law will be the extremity of the law. So you may say, well, we're going to be reasonable about this. You know, we're going to say we're going to make this law broad, but we'll be reasonable about it, and we're sure we're never going to get to the end point. You can guarantee you're going to get to that end point. Because every time someone wants to use this for their own advantage, effectively, and not necessarily, like, you know, when someone has the desire for whatever reason, it could be just to prove a point, to say, right, I'm going to go and arrest that person for drinking a bottle of beer on Central Park lawn, just because I can, because technically the law allows me to. Sometime, eventually, someone will do it. And eventually you end up at that point. So you need to make sure your laws are the end point. The law itself should be the end point of the law. You know, make it at the end point. And
this is why, out of all the things that I'm kind of neutral on and just say, like, I don't know enough about it, like even the gun debate, free speech is I'm not a free speech absolutist. I recognize the Supreme Court's decisions on a lot of these things, but the reason why free speech is so important is because, as you just stated, as the anecdote I gave, no matter what we enshrine in law today, it'll be taken to its most extreme in the next generation.
Absolutely.
And you're going to have people saying, look, the hate speech law is only about racism. And then what's
if only.
Well,
Christ.
Actually, there's a really good example of this.
Yeah.
Facebook considers white men a protected class. They do.
Yeah.
And there, I did a couple of videos about this. Like I did one like when they announced it because this pissed off the left a lot.
Oh yeah.
And what Facebook said was subcategories such as children are not protected. Men and women are protected because they're genders.
Yep.
Children are not protected by the Civil Rights Act in the United States. So if you say something disparaging about Mexican children, totally fine. If you say something disparaging about Mexicans, not okay.
Yep.
White people, not okay.
Yep.
Men, not okay. Women, not okay.
A lot of feminists came unstuck with this because they were sat there posting their man-hating, I hate men, men are scum.
Yep.
And then they'd find themselves with a 15, 30-day ban from Facebook, and they were outraged.
Yeah.
It's like, but this is a protected category. You wanted this.
Exactly. It's exactly what... And the adpocalypse, too.
Yeah.
When restricted mode came out. So there was this big controversy on YouTube with restricted mode, where you could turn it on and all of a sudden all these videos disappeared. And what disappeared first? What did everyone notice? LGBTQ videos.
Yep. Trans kids videos and things like this.
But not just for kids videos, like actual just LGBTQ creators were having their videos, they were gone.
I think that videos about sexuality aren't appropriate for children. This is the sort of thing that I think, there can be schools that, school programs and whatnot, but this should be something parents deal with their own children, in my opinion. I don't think there's, and if you're going to put a 13 plus restricted mode on, then under 13 you don't need to be watching videos about sexuality.
And they have the YouTube Kids app now.
Yeah.
And actually what's really interesting is I just found this out, the YouTube Kids app actually turns itself off after a while.
Really?
I don't know if it's a new feature, but it shows us like a YouTube TV face, and then it gets tired, and then it's flashing or something. And
I'm gonna have to get that for my kids.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. Any? I guess we've kind of reached the end point. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. I don't think that okay. So the problem that we have is it's difficult to defend something that's offensive because people assume or want to assume that you are defending it because you approve of the message. And I'm sure that anyone following mine or your channels are well aware that we don't approve of messages like this, but we do approve of the principle of free speech and the right people have to be free to be offensive. I mean, whether you agree with it or not.
And if exactly the point that we just made like a couple minutes ago, when I talk about watching Darkest Hour, there was a part in the movie where Churchill says, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, at what point will you allow the swastika to fly above Buckingham Palace? Yeah. And people are screaming, never! I was so like riled up watching that. I'm like, yeah! I was like, when he says like we would rather die than allow fascists to take over, I'm like, absolutely. I absolutely despise these people. Yeah. Like for obvious reasons having to do with my heritage. Yeah. But at the same time, I know that if we pass this law, someone's going to pick it up and smack me in the face with it in 10 years. They're going to hit my kids with it. Yeah. And it's going to be used in ways you never thought possible. Yeah. And that's why even when you talk about the courts, like it becoming a legal issue with colleges, whenever I hear about the government gaining more power, I'm like, I'm a left-leaning libertarian. I want the less power in organized government, but it's a big challenge for left-leaning libertarians in that the way I see it is we have to come to an agreement, and if we can't, we're in trouble, but we can't force anybody to agree with us. So it's what do you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to be able to make good arguments, I guess, to persuade people. But I mean, ultimately, there's this, and this is continual. Every democratic society suffers from this problem, where one party, honestly, usually socialist-leaning parties, will say, we want to give this power to the government. We want this new ability, this new legislation. And you have to explain to them, look, in 10 years' time, you're not going to be in power. It'll be your opponents that will be in power, and you'll have given them those tools. Like this, Obama is a great example with arbitrary drone strikes.
The National Defense Authorization Act.
They shut their mouths and fell into line, but now Trump has it. Oh my God, Trump can drone strike people.
Yep.
Get fucked.
I actually just talked about this. We had... Okay, I don't know if you knew this, but with George W. Bush, we created what's called Presidential Directive 51.
Oh, didn't we?
That allows the president to dismantle the government in the United States and restructure a new government.
Wow.
As they see fit.
That's a monarchical power here.
It's a terrifying power that I am surprised was ever...
That's literally what the Queen can do in this country.
I understand there's a good reason for it. The idea is that if there's a massive catastrophic failure of U.S. government, then there needs to be some kind of power that allows the next in succession or whatever, for the presidency, to then bring together, to say, look, under this rule, I am now in charge. Because it was created, it was like 9/11 era fears.
Yeah.
But now Trump has it. Mm-hmm. Then we have the National Defense Authorization Act, which was a provision was added. It was the indefinite detention provision that allowed, under the Obama government, to indefinitely detain anybody without charge or trial. And one of my favorites, and I'm saying favorites facetiously, the Disposition Matrix. And this allows, this is what you're referring to, it allows the President of the United States to sign off on whoever he wants to kill, even if they are American citizens.
And this has been used.
And now Trump has it. Yeah. And what did Obama do? Obama killed several American citizens without charge or trial in violation of the Constitution. Trump has done the same thing. Albeit, Obama did it more, but Obama was in a complete 2 terms. Yeah. We don't know what Trump will do in the future. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of people who support Trump who think he won't, but he already did. Yeah. It was a little girl killed in Yemen.
I didn't know that.
8-year-old girl. Oh, okay. So... It's scary to me when Americans... It's scary to me when someone's going to drone strike a foreign country, and we don't know why. It's really scary when they kill American citizens in violation of the Constitution.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. I mean, like, killing enemy combatants in a foreign country, okay, that's kind of what you expect your government to do. That's... But when they're killing...
I still don't like it.
No, I don't like it, but it's par for the course. It's, nobody's surprised when it happens. But killing citizens of your country without trial, without anyone else's interference, just the sign off of one person, it's a genuinely scary situation to be in.
And
now Trump has it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when I want to make sure everyone knows, when I say that Trump has it, it's not to imply that I think Trump is going to be worse than any of the other presidents.
No, I don't think so.
Honestly, I think he's going to be the same as every other president. Yeah. I know there's a lot of people who think he's worse. A lot of people think he's better, but to me, I'm just like, same shit, different toilet.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to piss people off.
The thing is, I mean, he's got the sort of constant sort of accumulation of powers that have been coming in ever since 9/11 in your country.
Exactly.
And like after Trump, someone else for whatever reasons will have these things. And
I've got to say one thing though, because I do feel like the U.S. media just rags on Trump nonstop, and for a lot of good reasons, absolutely. But with this Korea situation, if people don't zip their mouths and give support to the president and his administration, because we might actually see peace on the peninsula. That means a lot to me. And already what they've announced with ending the nuclear program, I'm like, credit where credit is due.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's genuinely amazing. And all it took was for Trump to show that he had bigger balls. You know, that he was prepared to go to the wire, and you know, Kim Jong Un was like, okay, fair enough. He gives it up.
Well, hopefully, maybe we'll see a peace treaty. Maybe we won't. But
who knows what will happen tomorrow? But given the sides at the moment, though, I mean, like, didn't happen previously.
Yep.
You know, this is a genuine achievement for the Trump administration. You've got to hand it to them.
I mean, we've heard rhetoric from North Korea before.
Yeah.
We've heard potential peace talks, but I can't believe they made an announcement on state TV.
They're actually doing this now, because I mean, like China and Russia and the president of the US and there were a couple of others are actually going to have meetings and things like this.
Summit.
Things are actually happening. I mean, imagine if Trump is the one who effectively opens up North Korea and diffuses the tensions there without a war.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
The talk of military intervention freaks me out.
Oh, and it's been going on for decades.
And then what happens in Syria freaks me out.
Yeah.
And then we hear that there's a summit happening, and I'm like,
yeah, good job, President Trump.
So, you know? Yeah, exactly. I think people are people. I don't think people are perfect. I think people who are in the presidency get ruled by the presidency, and it's not so much about them.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah.
This is what a lot of the sort of hardcore Trump supporters like. He's been co-opted by the deep state. It's like, well, to be honest with you, everyone is.
Yeah.
You know, there's every country. When people say the deep state, they mean the matrix of institutions that make up the governance of the country.
Yeah.
And these are filled with a civil service that don't just chop and change every time there's a new election. And so there is this is why there's a consistent American foreign policy, for example. You know, regardless of which president's in power.
Exactly. It's the intelligence agencies.
Not just them, but they're part of it.
Right.
They're part of this network.
And what, like 12th term congressmen?
Yeah. Exactly. It is a huge network of people, and you can't just like unpick it. So I guess we'll just we were gonna wrap it up 10 minutes ago. Yeah.
What can people expect tomorrow?
Right. Well, we're meeting at Leicester Square at midday, and then we're going to be marching to Downing Street. Outside of Downing Street, we'll be giving speeches. I will be talking about Enoch Powell, which, if anyone outside of this country hasn't heard of him, you can Google the phrase "rivers of blood," and then you'll see why this is going to be controversial. But it has to be done. And we're gonna have a 5 minutes of silence outside Downing Street to protest our censorship.
Do you think that you might face repercussions for speaking out in this way?
Possibly. I don't know.
All right.
It depends how they feel.
Yeah. We'll find out in the future. Who knows what'll happen tomorrow, but I'm going to be out there. I didn't know the sentencing was tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mentioned that earlier. I was kind of interested in just coming. I love coming to London. It really is a fun place, and I figured we could have a cool conversation. But I guess I'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
So stay tuned to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Timcast, because I probably will live stream. I don't want to commit to anything because I don't exactly know what's going on, but typically I will be live streaming. So stay tuned for that. And you can follow me on Twitter at Timcast. I don't know if you want to mention anything.
Oh, you can just Google Sargon of Akkad, and my channel's the first thing that pops up because I'm ruining the reputation of the historical Sargon. So
you actually are Sargon. You are more notable now than the actual Sargon.
Yeah.
You are the photo.
I hope in 500 years' time my photo isn't in the history books. You know, I'll be so sorry.
Do you have a Wikipedia page though?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. It's too late.
Yeah.
And now, so when you Google Sargon of Akkad, the actual ancient ruler's image doesn't come up.
No, it's my
Your
face.
image, yeah.
It's just me giving a smug face as well.
All right. So stay tuned. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.